What's going on, everybody? It's Marshall. I am the host of the Serial Progress Seeker podcast. I am really pumped for you to check out this episode today. This was a really fun conversation that we had with a very good friend of the show. His name is Casey Pearce, and man, does he fit the bill of a serial progress seeker. I tell you, he has got a really cool story. He's been through several really pivotal moments in his career that have kind of led him to where he is, and that's kind of what we talk about in this episode. We really dig into what those moments were, the reason that he reacted the way he did, and how prepared he actually felt to take on those moments. And I think that's a really cool conversation to have for anybody out there that's considering, making a big move and making a change in their lifestyle and switching up the way that they want to really interact in their day-to-day life and get the enjoyment out of life that they possibly can. So I'm really excited for you to dig into this episode. Come on in, check out episode 84 of the Serial Progress Seeker podcast. This one's called How to Prepare for the Moments That Turn Your Dreams into Reality. All right, Tab, I was thinking about this the other day, and I wanted to ask you this specifically because I don't know this answer about you, and I think this is a fun little conversation. So I'm going to dig into your brain a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to jump way back. I know, right? That's always the most fun conversations to have. Dig into your way back machine here. Tell me, when you were a kid, because every kid has this when you're growing up. Every kid wants to grow up to be a firefighter or a police officer or whatever it may be. When you were a kid, what was that dream job for you? What'd you want to do?
Extremely embarrassing.
Oh, good.
I wanted to be a country music star. Now, let me just say.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I cannot carry a tune to save my life. But when I was a kid, there's actually family videos somewhere of me, like at my grandparents' house. They had this older house that's got these partition things that like slide open and shut to kind of divide the room off. And we used to put on plays and shows for my grandparents. So I've got a video of me like on a stool with a guitar that I did not know how to play. And I'm singing some song that I made up that sounded horrible. But I was, at the very end of it, I gave a whole yeehaw and everything. So that was the childhood dream that never should have been a dream.
That is awesome. So what's going to happen is we're going to find that video. We're going to link it in the show notes, right? And then we're going to turn you into what's going to happen. This podcast is going to become about turning Tabitha into a country music star. I am so excited. This is going to be so fun.
That will never happen. That will never happen. I'm telling you, it's awful.
That's so funny. I love it. You know what it was for me? And it's funny because I carried it on all the way until I was in college. For me, I always wanted to be on ESPN. That was my dream. I wanted to.
I can see that.
I wanted to sit at a desk, or I wanted to, go to football, basketball, baseball games and be the commentator. That's kind of what I wanted to do. And then what's funny is as I shifted through my life and realized, number one, I wasn't going to be an athlete because I just wasn't athletic. So as I grew a little bit out of that, and then I grew to kind of started like falling in love with music and stuff. But here we are. I just want to point this out. This is cool. Here we are. What's in front of me? There's a microphone. I might not be on ESPN and I might not be singing. I might not be a country music star, but here we are. We're in front of microphones. So I think, Tab, we've done pretty well for ourselves. So I'm pretty excited.
We made it.
We did. Here we are. And I promise this whole episode's not going to be just about us patting ourselves on the back, but I feel really good about where we are, Tab. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, what this episode is about is something really, really cool. And this is something that has kind of, to be honest with you, it's been on the minds and the souls and the hearts of everybody here at Serial Progress Seeker for the last little while. And we've been tossing a lot of information at everybody. If you've been listening to the podcast, we've got a lot of cool episodes in our archives that, kind of dive into some really cool specific things about, entrepreneurship and, owning your business and digital marketing and things like that. And not that we're going away from that but what we are doing is something really, really cool. We've seen an opportunity. It's because we've all become such a close-knit team, and we're all noticing the fact that we all have serial progress seekers all around us, right? It's insane. So I think that's kind of what we want to get to, and that's what, that's kind of what we're doing here today, is we want to get to the point where we start bringing in people that we know, and then some people that we don't know, that we consider to be serial progress seekers in the world, the people that are out there in the world literally seeking progress on a daily basis, and then talking about their journeys to doing so. Because not only does everyone have a story, but folks that we kind of see like ourselves, that kind of have this mindset and kind of have this feeling about themselves, that they've come through some things, they've been at crossroads in their lives and crossroads in their careers, and they somewhere along the way they obviously probably saw themselves as a serial progress seeker and just didn't know it, and we've been able to identify that a little bit. So I'm really, really excited for us to be here today. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Tabitha. This is a really, really fun one. For me, this is a guy that I know is one of the best storytellers I know. I can tell you, I've known him for a long time. He's been telling really, really good stories. He can tell you a story about, baseball teams from the 1940s that have won the World Series. He can tell you about a story about him, working at Super Bowls. He can tell you stories about him, working in healthcare. He can tell you stories about sharing an apartment with me and being part of a band for an entire summer. Those stories maybe we'll stick, we'll stick those somewhere else, not on this actual episode, but there are lots of cool stories. And I'm excited to kind of bring him on and talk about this story, and specifically some really specific things that he's been able to do over his career and his path that have kind of supported what we're talking about. And that's how to be prepared when your dreams come and smack you in the face and start to become a reality. So no further ado, I want to make sure we introduce our good friend, Casey Pearce. Casey, it's good to see you, my friend. How you doing today?
Good to see you too, Marshall. I'm great. Tabitha, good to see you.
Happy to have
Man,
you here.
absolutely, dude. We're excited to have you here because, and like I said, when I start thinking about the people in my own personal Rolodex that are serial progress seekers, man, I think about you towards the top of my list, and it's because, you have been at those crossroads in a career several times, and you've chosen, maybe some paths less traveled to kind of get to where you are today. And I love being able to kind of tell stories like that. But let's get started a little bit, because obviously a lot of our audience don't know you, Casey, and I want to introduce you to them. And so tell us a little bit about your early background, where you're from, kind of what led you to kind of where you and I crossed paths, which was in college.
Yeah, and so my story professionally is a lot like yours, Marshall. So, I always loved athletics, and I grew up all over the country. My dad's a Baptist preacher, so we moved around a little bit. Lived in the Seattle area for 9 years, but Arkansas roots. So we moved to Russellville. I went to high school in Russellville, and then came to A-State in 1999. And kind of what led to that point, I always loved athletics, loved sports, grew up reading the sports page, watching sports with my dad, but played athletics, played sports as a kid, not competitively, not very physically gifted, but I just knew pretty early on that if I wanted to have a career in sports, I needed to find another path towards that. So I got involved in sports media. I called sports talk shows when I was little. I mean, like as a kid, it was almost like a bit, like people who knew Casey in Tacoma or Casey in Columbia or whatever.
Oh man, we gotta
some of
find
these
those.
shows.
We gotta
Oh
find
yeah.
those.
Oh man, they're classic. So I just really ingrained myself in the media, and then even in high school, got to do cover Russellville High School athletics with the for the Russellville newspaper, for the local radio station there, the little 500 watt AM station. And so then leading up to that, I had an uncle tell me, like, if you want to work in media, you got to go to A-State. That's the place to be in this region. And that was some of the best advice that I've ever received. I hadn't really considered it at that point. So when I graduated high school, I ended up at A-State as a radio TV major, kind of like you, just wanting to get on somebody to give me a microphone and let me talk sports.
Right. And let's clarify too, because we got a lot of people listening. We're talking Russellville, Arkansas, and we're talking Arkansas State University, because I know that we're going to have people chime in and say, "Oh, I'm from
Not
Russellville."
Arizona.
That's right. Oh man, that climbs
Yeah.
up.
Well, and there's a Russellville, Alabama, and a Russellville, Kentucky too. Yeah.
See, there you go.
And a Jonesboro, Georgia, that we get confused with a lot.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, and then you and I cross paths in college at Arkansas State. Tabitha, you were at Arkansas State at the same time. I don't know how we didn't all kind of run together. What were we doing?
I don't know. Well, I was in the communication department, so mine was all journalism. So you guys were TV and radio. I was more, behind the scenes
But
kind of stuff.
we were
So
right there. We probably had all the
all
same
together,
professors and
we
everything.
probably passed each other like on a daily basis.
We've all got great Lisa Moskal stories, I'm
That's
sure.
right.
So
No
I'll,
doubt.
she's my favorite.
No doubt. Absolutely. Well, so, okay. So those are the early days, Casey, but somewhere along the
Right.
way, obviously professionally, you kind of determined, the path you wanted to go. Obviously you wanted to work in sports and things like that. But, what kind of factors were kind of leading you into the direction that you ended up going? So like what kind of things were you kind of getting interested in, and what was piquing your interest?
Well, I mean, especially in the early 2000s, digital media was just changing so fast and so many more opportunities were coming around. So that created a lot of opportunities in sports media that I really didn't even know exist. I knew athletics and communications, and I didn't really know how they came together, what exactly that would look like. So I did just a lot of different things. Like I said, worked for a radio station, did some freelance work for professional newspapers, wrote for student newspapers. You know, and then of course my education as well. So um, I ended up in the sports management program at A State because that really gave me a little bit of business, a little bit of communications, a little bit about that entertainment management. But I still took a lot of communications classes, and it ended up being just the perfect blend of education for me. I got all three of those areas, and really prepared me for what was next.
So
Absolutely.
what
Now,
was next?
yeah, what was that begs the question, right? What was
I,
next?
I was going to let y'all set me up. So really, the big jump that you kind of threw at there, Marshall. So I had to get an internship in athletic administration of some sort to complete the last 6 hours of my degree, and I had been pretty realistic about the places I'd been applying. A lot of Sunbelt athletic departments, sports information departments, kind of smaller colleges, things like that. And I just really wasn't getting anywhere. And it was pretty frustrating because I'd done some legwork. I probably hadn't done the networking end of that, but I at least had writing samples to share with people, air checks to share with people. But I just wasn't getting anywhere. So my spring break that senior year, getting kind of frustrated, I just needed to get away. So I decided I was going to go to Nashville and spend the week with my high school best friend, who was
Yeah,
a student at Vanderbilt, and a guy that you came to know pretty well over the years as well.
absolutely.
So that week we were just kind of messing around Nashville, having fun. He was in class that week, but I didn't let that get in the way of my great week. So the last day I was there, we were going to go to lunch, and we ended up going to Taco Bell on West End Avenue. And we walk in there, get to the front of the line to order, and this is 2003, and neither of us has any cash. So we put a debit card out, and they tell us we don't take cards. So we're sitting there arguing kind of about what we're going to do. And this woman behind us in line puts $10, $20, whatever it was, down and says, "Guys, this happened to me the other day. Let me take care of it." And so we were just incredibly gracious to her, and she sat down by herself, and we just asked, "Hey, you mind if we join you?" We just to thank you, and she was very gracious in that. Started a conversation with her, and she was asking us where we were in school. Okay, you're about to finish. What do you want to do? And I told her, just like I've laid out to you, athletics and communications, looking for an internship. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm not having any luck. And she just kind of I remember she just kind of grinned and said, "Would you be interested in working in Nashville?" Well, of course. And so this woman her name was Yvette White. She owned a marketing company in Nashville, and one of her big clients was Baptist Health, and Baptist was the title sponsor of the Tennessee Titans practice facility. And
Nice.
so she had a lot of connections with the Titans. She introduced me to someone who worked for her. His name is Ron Hollis. I'm still in touch with Ron today. Ron's really well plugged in and well respected in Nashville, and especially that marketing and communications and sports scene. So
Right.
um, Ron and Yvette got my resume in front of the right people, and 4 months later, I moved to Nashville and started an internship with the Titans.
That's an incredible story. So I'm guessing you're at Taco Bell, so you're probably dressed like a college bum kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And you just got the biggest opportunity of your life when you had no money to pay for, like, that is the most incredible story I think I've ever heard.
it really is. And and not just that, we'll get into more of that, but it sparked a 13-year career in the NFL. I worked 8 Super Bowls. I was able to meet some of my lifelong heroes and be involved in things that I never really could have dreamed of. I have not been in touch with Miss White in a while. About 10 years ago, I got invited to speak at a banquet at Arkansas State, the College of Communications banquet. And I just, out of the blue, Googled her and emailed her my speech. And she wrote back, was very gracious. It was a really neat, because I think my first day, so I did 2 internships. And then the first day I got my first full-time job in the NFL, I also emailed her to say, hey, this is where our conversation has gone. If I can ever do anything for you at all, please let me repay the favor. And then again, so then I emailed her about 10 years ago. I have not been in touch with her since. But yeah, so basically still a stranger that completely changed my life.
Isn't that
That
insane?
is
So
an
it's
incredible.
contrary to popular belief, we are not sponsored by Taco Bell. This was a great Taco Bell story. I'm sure Casey was halfway through a chalupa right about this time this amazing moment happened. But I mean, how cool is that? And that's exactly what we wanted to talk about. Tab, am I right? Like we wanted to talk
Yeah.
about you know moments, right? Because there's so often in our lives, I think it happens to every single one of us that even when we don't recognize it, and God bless, there are times when we don't recognize it at the time, especially for the importance that it's going to carry in our lives. But those moments that come across, man, and being able to you know, not only prepare yourself, but kind of arm yourself for when that does happen and be able to react. Right, Tab, have you had I'm sure you've had an extensive career too. Have you had some specific moments that you can point to that you've had to kind of like jump and react, or now looking back on your career, can you point to certain things like that? I'm sure maybe
Oh
not
gosh.
Taco Bell, but
Not on the spot, I can't. No, I can't think of anything. But I
yeah, yeah,
but being a well-rounded individual that can talk to just about anyone, I can tell you when I worked at Relentless and we were in Phoenix, Arizona, or Tempe, Arizona. I remember working out there one day. They're like, "Hey, come out to dinner with us," and we ended up going out to dinner with the CEO of Coors Brewing Company, who is like this engineer guy whose brain power is like ginormous. And I'm over here
yeah.
just like, keep your mouth shut, don't say anything because you're going to sound so stupid. But be prepared for any kind of, I wasn't prepared to go to dinner with that guy. It was an incredible dinner.
Well, I mean,
Be ready for
that's
those moments because you never know when they're going to land, right?
I mean, you really don't, and that's why obviously Casey was kind of in a mode of trying to figure out what his next step was, and here he was walking into a Taco Bell. Talk about not being fully knowledgeable of that the moment was about to happen. But so Casey, take us about tell me about. I mean, did you take yourself back to that specific moment in that Taco Bell? Obviously you had been on the search for quite a while just because it's kind of part of your deal, you're moving on. What Take us back to right then when you had that conversation. Did you feel right then that was a kind of a shifting moment for you?
I wanted to. I didn't. I wasn't quite sure though, because you hear people all the time that say, "Hey, we should get together sometime." Like, "Hey, I
Mm.
know somebody this,"
Sure.
and then nothing ever comes up of it. But it's almost like off the cuff. So I wouldn't necessarily say that. And it took a few months for it to come together too. It's not like they hired me the next week. So it was some grind and some pull, and so I wouldn't say instantaneously, but I at least knew that I had some good connections in Nashville with some real possibilities.
Well, and yeah,
So
yeah, go ahead, Tab, go ahead.
no, I was going to ask, like, so you had this meeting with this person, this chance encounter, which was incredible. You go back to college. What did the process look like from there? I mean, were you having to make several phone calls? Did you have to follow up 1,000 times? Like, it wasn't instantaneously. So, but it also didn't mean you went back and just sat on your haunches and was like, I'm just going to wait for this opportunity to come to me. Like,
Right?
what did
Yeah,
it actually look like?
I was still applying for other internships and other jobs, and you know, I was finishing my coursework, so I had all my classroom work done at that point. I just had that last 6 hours to finish
Hmm.
to graduate. So I knew I couldn't quite look for a full-time job. It really was a little bit of a limbo kind of waiting mode to kind of see how that shook out. I thought I'd landed an internship with an agency in Chicago that booked celebrity speakers, and that kind of got yanked at the last minute. I don't even really know what happened there, but they'd almost made a verbal offer but not put it on paper, and then that fell through. So
Oh.
um, it and at that point I'd even given up on not really given up on the NFL idea. I just kind of thought, it wasn't. So no, it took a long time. It was really a stuck period though. There wasn't a lot to do beyond finishing my coursework and kind of. Yes, I did make several calls. I had some media connections in Nashville that I reached out to and said, "Hey, if you know anybody, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a hand with this."
Yeah. So after talk about those next steps. I obviously you went through a little period of time there. So what happened that latched on to, and then I promise we're going to move on past this Taco Bell story. But this is obviously a pivotal moment for you, and I think what we want to understand is the steps you took to kind of take advantage of this pivotal moment.
Well, I mean, I think it was just having that experience, having worked in a lot of media and having a resume ready. I think I had to have a couple people go to bat for me just for a couple different things. A guy that became one of the more influential people in my life, the guy that was my supervisor there with the Titans, said, "This is the guy I want to hire," and those it just takes time.
Yeah.
I think in any job search, it never goes as quickly as the candidate wants it to be. So, um, you know, just kind of some patience and perseverance. And I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like asking somebody out on a date.
It's very much like that. We've
May-
actually
may-
it's funny, we talked about that several times, how it's, when you're talking to someone in business or, in your professional life, a lot of times it's like you're trying to take them out on a date. Absolutely.
but find that balance of letting them know you're interested without overdoing it and making them
Mhm.
run away. So
Don't
I would
don't
say
be
there
the
was probably
creeper. Is
like a
that what you're
2 month
saying?
window of, you're
Yeah.
right, of that happening.
It's weird, Tab. Did you catch that, Tab? He was looking right at me when he said that. I don't understand. That was kind of rude. I
It,
don't understand that, but
nope.
that's funny. All right, so fast forward, Casey, when when this thing, obviously, because it happened, when it happened, what was that moment like? And then, so from there, obviously that had to kickfire a lot of different things. So walk us through that.
Well, I think you were with me when I got the phone call. We
Of
were in
course I
Charleston,
was.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was kind of like, I mean, it was just this huge relief. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen if I didn't get that internship. I was probably going to go work at a restaurant for 6 months and try again for that spring internship cycle. So it was just like a huge relief that, okay, now we've got something tangible. We had 2 weeks left. Marshall and I were working a summer camp together in Charleston, South Carolina. And so we were going to move home and pack up and then move to Nashville and get rolling. But getting all the paperwork for internship stuff and figuring out what all that looked like, that's kind of what it boiled down to.
Tab, I guess you probably didn't even know that. So yeah, he and
No.
I can you imagine what this celebration was like? I can remember, Casey, I can remember exactly where we were, dude. It was so much fun because obviously we had confided in each other, and we knew a lot about what each other were dealing with, and that was weighing really heavy on Casey at the time. And I can remember us
Bet.
sitting there. We were at lunch. We were at lunch, weren't
Yeah.
we? Yeah. Uh,
Mama's Cafe.
that's right. And he got the phone
Yeah.
call, and you would have thought that, whatever team that was local to Charleston, South Carolina had just won the, World Series of the Super Bowl. It was unbelievable. I remember us jumping up and hugging and running around and stuff. It was really, really fun, but
It's
it
great.
was really, really exciting. So, okay. Obviously you're in the NFL now. The first thing that I want to know right out of the gate is, because this is obviously for you, this is a dream gig, right?
Absolutely.
This is a dream gig right out of the gate. So what we want to know is, did it end up as a dream gig? Like, was it what you expected? You know,
I don't know necessarily that experience what I expected. So it was kind of interesting. I ended up, because it was for credit and they weren't going to pay me, I ended up working basically 3 days a week plus home games with the Titans. And then I had another job at a bookstore that I worked the other 4 days a week. So I wasn't like completely immersed in the team. I would come in, I'd go to practice, I'd do a post game or post practice, post game report, write a story. The most beneficial thing I got from that year was I got just an outstanding mentor who's still somebody that's very, very special to me. His name's Gary Glenn. He worked for the Titans for over 20 years, and he just really gave me practical advice day to day. This is how you do these things. This is how you carry yourself. This is what to expect. Because there's just a lot of bravado and free stuff and glitz that goes around an NFL facility. So it's, hey, be grateful for what you get. Don't expect things. Just be humble, carry yourself low, be quiet, be, for the most part, just not necessarily mind your own business, but be cognizant of that. Try not to stick out too much, things like that. So at the end of that semester, that season, he kind of encouraged me, you've got some real talent, you've got the ability to do this. What you really need to do next is you need to do a full-time internship. So he helped me with that process of connecting with people. I started applying for internships across the country. And it's really funny. I think I sent resumes everywhere except the California and New York teams because I knew that I wouldn't be able to afford to live in California or New York. So I just kind of scratched those things off. And then I ended up had somebody from the New York Jets contact me interested. And so of one of the like 5 places I didn't apply to, I ended up interning with the Jets the next season.
Oh, that's funny. Life
So,
has got a way to
that
just
next
shove it
year,
in there, even when you're not planning it. Life's
absolutely.
going to make it happen.
No doubt.
So that next year, I was a full-time intern with the Jets. I made $1,000 a month. I lived on Long Island. I sounded like I was from Arkansas, culturally, professionally. And I had a couple different opportunities that year, and I went with the Jets just because I knew that a year of working in that media market would be unlike anything else. And we were really good that year. We were 12-4. Curtis Martin led the league in rushing. We were a playoff team, so got so much of all of that experience that year. And was able to really grow again, just writing a lot, expanding my network. And yeah, I mean, I was 22 years old too, so there was a lot of life to be learned from those experiences too.
I can only imagine.
What kind of yeah, when you talk about writing and expanding your network, I think that's something that a lot of people can latch on to. So dive into that a little bit. Like specifically, what kind of writing were you doing? And then what kind of opportunities were you being put into to where you could kind of, network with some people that could potentially help you down the line?
So I was writing news stories for the team website and publications. So I was kind of like a reporter that worked for the team, and that's kind of, I didn't really know that role existed, and it was still really new at that time. So I was kind of part of the media corps, and so you have national writers come in all the time, and I've never been afraid to introduce myself to people and find common ground with them and really latch onto them. And so one of the more memorable parts of that, I was a huge Dolphins fan growing up, had the Dan Marino posters on my wall, obsessed. And so, when I was in college, I would sit in the computer lab in the Ellis Library at A State and read the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel every day. And so when we played the Dolphins that year, I just went up and introduced myself to Alex Marvez, who was the Dolphins beat writer at that time. And Alex and I became really good friends over the years. And I remember just in that kind of randomness, he said, the league takes interns to come work the Super Bowl every year. You should apply to do that. And again, I hadn't really given much thought to that, but I sent an email to somebody and reached out and ended up getting to go to Jacksonville that year. That first Super Bowl that I worked was the Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl. And again, just being around PR directors from a little over half the NFL teams is kind of like an on-the-job or on-the-spot audition that week, and just running around trying to, again, be respectful, but work hard and be reliable to people and be an asset to them, so that next spring when jobs came open, I would have some immediate connections made.
That's really cool. That's I specifically wonder too, like, because all I'm thinking about now is the correlation between, we talked about your very big moment at Taco Bell, but now we're talking about some really big moments that were kind of encapsulated in smaller increments. Like, you just had a conversation with a guy that you followed and admired, and it led you into 8 years working the Super Bowl. Like, and that's another moment that you can point to in your career, another spot in your trajectory that kind of takes you to literally living your dreams in a lot of scenarios.
Absolutely. And the line that I always, not line like it's prepared, but the way that I would always tell specifically sports media people, these are people that I've watched or listened to or read for a long time. I'd always tell them, I really enjoy your work when I did. And it was sincere. It's not, I'm a fan of you. I'm not fanboy. I'm not cheesy. It's that you work really hard and you're really good at your job. And your job is to inform and entertain. And you've done that to me over
Yeah,
the years. So thank you for that. So, I mean, that's just a stroke, a way to connect with people that I always found really beneficial.
no doubt. Tab, you got any questions about that before I move, kind of direct
No,
this towards the next direction?
no, I'm kind of curious how things changed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one more thing I want to dig into right here, Casey. Tell us a little bit about. So obviously there was a big jump for you to make that move to Nashville to take that first gig, and then an even bigger jump to take the gig and move into New York. So take the NFL part out of it. Tell us about your life, and you're making these huge jumps and these huge changes in your life. What about that first jump kind of helped you prepare for those next moves that you were making? And feel free to talk about those moves because you had several of them over the next several years.
Well, and I do think as a child moving around a little bit, moving always a willing that instilled almost that was natural to me. I didn't mind picking up and moving and meeting whole new people, and that being the new kid in class 3 or 4 times as a kid always. I think it can be hard, but it can also be really beneficial in that I adjusted to new places. I was willing to go anywhere. And I absolutely was. My parents helped me out financially. There were a few times through that. But what life really looked like, I mean, I rented a room from a woman that I worked with the Jets, and I
Okay.
paid $500 a month for it. Again, I made $1,000. These days, I think interns have to make minimum wage. Like, so, you're working
That's
40,
good.
50, 60 hours a week. You're a little bit more, even at minimum wage, that's a little bit more livable than
Yeah.
where we're at there. But, I didn't get to go sightseeing in the city every week. I didn't get to live at large, but there's always free food floating around in an NFL facility. So I found my ways to get some meals here and there. And, you know, uh, I mean, it was just really different. I was young enough that probably wasn't aware of everything that was at my fingertips from a sightseeing or cultural sense in Long Island. But yeah, I mean, I made some friends that I still keep in touch with on Long Island, and but the main thing was grinding through, building a portfolio again, building that network, getting my career ready for that next step.
Yeah, and I think what's important about what you just said there too is because a lot of people are going to hear, oh, he went and interned for the Titans, and then he went and moved to New York and worked for the Jets, and then I know you made some other pretty prolific moves along the way too. Oh, he was living this glamorous life. Well, maybe not. Didn't even have time, or it sounds like even money to be able to go out and see sites and stuff like
I bet
that.
it was
So,
a lots of Taco Bell meals.
oh, no doubt.
Yeah, there absolutely was.
And as
Absolutely.
many six packs of tacos as you could stand. Yeah,
That's right.
Uh-huh.
that's so funny. So okay, talk about the last couple steps in the NFL journey, and then I want us to transition to what Tab said too, because I think it's really cool how you've kind of made even more moves as you've gone on.
Yeah. So that summer again, I'd kind of just put myself at a position where when jobs came open, I think again, this is before job boards worked exactly like they do today. It was and especially in that niche world, it was very much word of mouth how jobs came about.
Yeah,
So when a job came open, you'd hear just through um, your circle, hey, this job's open, you should reach out to them. So I'd heard in the early spring that the Chargers had an opening. The San Diego Chargers had an opening for a website and publications editor, and so I kind of aggressively began pursuing that. There were a couple other things out there that I'd chased. Had an interview with another team that just wasn't the right time and place. Actually, got to go down to Jacksonville and interview with the Jaguars, but wasn't a position I was quite ready for. But I was really fortunate to get to go through that interview and make that connection. But again, I kind of paced out over the course of that 3 or 4 months. I flirting with the Chargers, trying to get them, asking them on a date, please, please
yeah,
date me. So again, I think it was early April. I left New York. I moved back to Nashville, lived with my buddy, my Taco Bell buddy. I think I lived with you too, Marshall, didn't I?
Probably for a minute. Yeah. I was sleeping on a lot of couches in those days. So yeah.
Right. I was working for a landscaping company, just kind of waiting for that call to come through. And finally, in late June, it did. And the Chargers called and offered me a job. And I was working laying sod. And I remember, it was midday when I got that call that you can start whenever you can get here. So I put the grass on the pallet and the pallet on the truck. And I told the guy, I'm sorry, I got to go. I'm moving to San Diego tomorrow.
Didn't even finish the job.
Didn't
Did
even
you hear
finish
that,
the
Tab?
job. Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm out. See ya.
I
gotta
had,
go.
I had some packing to do,
Had a flight to
I'd
catch.
say so.
an interstate to catch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You drove, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
a long drive. Whew.
Everything I owned in the back of my Plymouth Breeze.
Yes. That is crazy. That's crazy. Okay, so San Diego. Oh my gosh. How long were you in San Diego?
So I was there. This is summer of '05, and I was there until February 2010. So, my 20s, young, single in the most beautiful city in America, working for a playoff team full of superstars. It was awesome. I couldn't have had it any better. It's just, I have such great memories and great opportunity to be around some really cool people and do some awesome stuff there.
That's awesome. But you weren't done in the NFL world yet. So
No,
what was the next shit?
and there was both personal and professional there. I just knew that I'd probably never have a family living in San Diego. Just I got tired of being so far away from my family all the time,
Yeah.
and I'd kind of hit a little bit of a ceiling career wise, just with where things were going. So that in 2010, I had an opportunity to move to St. Louis and take a job with the Rams and get away from the full-time editorial into their public relations to do some media relations, strategic communications stuff there. So February of 2010, I packed up my car and moved back across the country and took a PR job with the St. Louis Rams.
That's crazy. So all right, Tab, for everybody else keeping up at home. We've had the Tennessee Titans, we've had the New York Jets, we've had the San Diego Chargers, and now we're in St. Louis with the Rams. And I'm doing the directional map. Holy cow, we are all over the place. So it's insane. You really did. You literally went coast to coast. It's insane. So yeah, and then now, obviously, I'm looking around, buddy. Here I am in St. Louis. I'm looking everywhere for a football team. There ain't one. So
right.
So tell me about this next big moment that I know that's coming up that you had to make a big decision.
Well, and there's the personal and professional there too. Right after I moved to St. Louis, I started dating my eventual wife. She lived in Jonesboro. I lived in St. Louis. We did the back and forth thing every weekend.
Yeah.
And so 2 years into that, she ended up moving to St. Louis. So we dated for 2 years, yes, and were there married for 4 years. Had our first child in 2014. So obviously that changed a lot. But I was still all in all time. I had the goal at that point of being a communications director in the NFL, and just like head coaches, there are only 32 of those jobs in the world.
Yeah,
they're coveted and they're held by very, very talented people. I don't know if I'd ever gotten there. I'd love to have had the opportunity to see, but as you alluded to, January of 2016, things changed pretty drastically, pretty quickly for an employee of the St. Louis Rams. So
Yeah.
the team relocated to Los Angeles. We were not Los Angeles people. We had an opportunity to go, but it just wasn't right for us. Aside from everything else, at that point in my life, I was, my first year out was the first year. My son turned 2 in spring of 2016. So that football season would have been the first that he was really aware that I wasn't home to put him to bed. And I was gone every weekend and gone all day, every Sunday. So there's some, I was called at that point to be a full-time father and husband and not work 80, 90 hours a week and travel the country. So,
switched.
absolutely. I would have had a really hard time ever walking away from that career on my own. But again, the way just things happen and my path was directed. I always say when the Rams moved west, we moved home. My wife and I moved back to Jonesboro. That was a really, really trying period. I was naive enough to think that I wasn't 100% convinced the team was going to move, which I probably should have been a little bit more. Um, so there was more shock than probably I should have had. I also I had a really hard time. I would have thought uh, I wouldn't have thought the transition would have been difficult professionally. That some of the strategic communications things that I was involved in, just being in the room for those and being a part of a team that put together a plan to deal with some pretty significant um, issues and managing just the day-to-day media relations, being a part of that team that managed that for such a high-profile industry, high-profile company, I had I did not have immediate response. I did not get a lot of job interviews that spring, so that was really tough. We were open again to moving, to staying in St. Louis, to moving to Nashville, to moving home to Jonesboro. But I went about 5 months basically unemployed, just spending all day, every day applying for jobs, and was very fortunate that Ritter Communications, a telecommunications company in Jonesboro, had a marketing communications position open, and they moved us home. So we moved back to Jonesboro in 2016, and I worked there for a couple of years and was mostly writing marketing content for them. There wasn't as much of the strategic comm role. So that combined with, there was a new medical school that had opened in Jonesboro. I had some friends that had gone to work with, and I started hearing about the mission and vision of this medical school and kind of what they were trying to do. And so a couple years in, they created a marketing communications director position. And I was just really, really fortunate through some of the connections that I'd made to be in line for that. So in 2018, I moved over to NYIT College of Osteopathic Medicine on the campus of Arkansas State University. One full circle moment of this, NYIT is located in Old Westbury, New York, on Long Island, which is about 10 minutes from where I worked when I worked for the Jets. Wow. So, when I started meeting my New York colleagues and telling them, yeah, I know where Hempstead and Old Westbury and Manhasset and Massapequa are, they didn't, that kind of dumbfounded them as far as an Arkansan knowing a little bit about who they were and where they were. So yeah, I've been here for a little over 4 years now, and it's just a really, really cool position to be in here. It's when it comes down to it, it's storytelling. When I interviewed for my job here at the medical school, my boss, Dr. Shane Spites, told me, we're doing a lot of really good things. We're not telling people about them. I need you to come tell people what we're doing. So, and really, I was given a clean slate to find ways to go tell people about who we are and what we're doing. And so that's media relations, it's advertising, it's social media. I speak to civic clubs in mostly pretty small towns on a pretty regular basis. I've got a ready to go, hey, here's who we are, here's what we're trying to do, and here's a student that's from your community who's trained with us to be a physician and is now going to practice in this area. So that's kind of I've rambled just a little bit, but how my transition looked over those couple of years.
Isn't that insane? It's yeah, go ahead, Tab.
No, I was just curious. So do you miss working in the NFL at all? Like that side of, because it's completely different as far as what you're talking about. So do you miss that?
It is. I miss the people. I miss being part of a team like that. I miss the glitz and glamour. I mean, I miss getting to be in a football stadium and be around and connected to, and I absolutely miss a lot of that. But I can honestly say that the day to day, what I do with my job here, I enjoy. It's very, very comparable. I really, well, and I like being able to go home at 5 o'clock and have holidays off and some of those things. There's give and take in anything that you do, and so those are some of but I really do get to meet young medical students with these huge hearts, with desires to go practice medicine in their hometowns and serve and make a huge difference. We've got, you guys are both from a really small town, or not to speak for you, Tabitha, Marshall's hometown of Pocahontas is rural and small in Northeast Arkansas.
Yeah.
And
I'm from a town with 384 people. I got him beat.
She wins. And what is that?
She wins.
What town is that?
Hewlin, Missouri. Probably never heard of it.
I've not. But I mean,
farming
specifically,
town. It's tiny.
Specifically Marshall's hometown, we've got 3 alumni. from Pocahontas that
There you
have
go.
gone through our program and are going to be physicians in Northeast Arkansas. So
That's incredible. I was gonna ask too, like, have you ever had an opportunity to kind of pay back what that lady did for you in Taco Bell? Have you been able to be that person for someone else? But just hearing you talk about these students and being able to help them through the program and then become physicians in the area, I think that answers that question. But
well, I wouldn't say that I'm helping them through. I'm helping them tell their stories.
yeah.
I'm highlighting them, helping people be aware of what they're doing. There's so much. They're all so much smarter than me. I mean, my since going to work in medical school, my respect level for physicians has just gone off the chart. Just the quantity and quality of information that they have to process and maintain, but also and retain. It's unbelievable. And I honestly, like, some days I don't know how anybody's a doctor. It just takes an incredible individual to be able to get through medical school and be able to practice, and then to do something so noble to serve. So I say that to say my admiration level for all the people that I work with, our faculty, our staff, our students, is off the charts. I do try as much as I can. I speak to classes a lot at A-State. Um, I reach out to folks. I'm always love to tell people my story, and I haven't had a such a direct, like, provided a Taco Bell moment for somebody, but hopefully, I mean, I always am willing to chat with people to tell them how I got where I went, what I did, how, yeah, and hopefully give them just a little bit of advice to help them in their career.
No doubt. And you Casey, too. I can remember through COVID, you guys were really present. I can remember online in communication about, COVID related issues, whether it be getting vaccinations or whatever it may be. And I think it's important to kind of note the fact that, those moments that have built you to this point are setting you up for some big shit, man. Like that. And I don't know how you see it. I can tell you from my outside perspective looking in, when I see my buddy on social media talking about the importance of how people can brace themselves for what's coming in this COVID era, and the way that you can be more healthy and stuff like that, man, that's important work. And I think that's not lost on me. And I know it's not lost on a lot of people.
Well, it's really funny you mentioned that, because I've said this a lot of times. That so my boss, Dr. Shane Spites, he's from Arkadelphia, Arkansas, a little bitty town. He's a family physician, is the dean of the medical school here. But he's also the county health officer and the medical director for the city of Jonesboro. So he wears a lot of hats. Very passionate about public health. He's very well spoken and a great communicator. I've always told people, as you climb the chart in the NFL PR circles, the top guy handles the head coach, and that's something you always aspire to be. And especially during the pandemic, but always just being the dean's PR guy, it's been a lot like handling the head coach. So there's
Bet.
definitely some correlation in there. And yes, he is extremely talented at being able to take a very complicated topic and be compassionate while answering concerns, even if some of the things that he got thrown at him, some of the questions were pretty off the wall over the last couple of years.
I bet.
Yeah, so absolutely, we took a lot of pride in providing good information, encouraging people to get vaccinated, and helping people understand why some of the crazy stuff you see on the internet, why that wasn't quite accurate, and why they'd be a lot better off trusting a good physician than surfing Facebook for their medical information.
Sure. Well, tell me about this. And this is kind of where I want to kind of wrap things up, because it's so awesome to be able to kind of walk through this process, because you can absolutely pinpoint a handful of serious moments in your career, in your life, that have been what I would consider to be those crossroad moments. And you've been able to obviously accomplish some really cool things. You got to experience some really cool things along the way. So from your experience and what you've learned, especially when you think about these moments. We talk about the Taco Bell moment. We talk about the gentleman that you spoke to from the Fort Lauderdale Sentinel. We talk about the moment that, the Rams packed up and moved, and you got to determine what you're going to do with your family. And what are some of the things that you did to prepare and that others can do to prepare for those big moments that we're all faced with when it comes to kind of turning our life into our dreams, which is something you've been successful in doing.
Well, you got to have people who will help you, and you got to be willing to accept their help and lean on them. That's one of the biggest things. Just trying to not be bold enough to reach out to ask for help. Asking people to connect you. Hey, I know you know somebody here, and can you make that phone call for me? Can you help me? Because
Right.
really, I just don't know people who get hired in any job that I've ever been without knowing somebody who knows somebody. So that's where those people skills and I also think it's having relationships with people so you're not only calling on them when you need something, having that equity. And I don't mean being intentional. I got to make sure that I ask him this so that when I need this, but just building true and genuine relationships with people, being honest with yourself and self-aware about what your talents are, what you can do, what you can't do, and finding places to utilize your skills to the best of your ability. Making sure you've got all your tools sharp enough that you're ready for those moments.
Yep.
It'd have been one thing to meet Miss White in Taco Bell and tell her I want to work in sports. It's another thing to have a resume ready that says I've worked for a newspaper, a radio station. I have a degree in this. I was involved in this organization in school. To have things lined up to be ready for that moment. Because I hear people all the time say, I want to work in sports. What do you want to do? I don't know. I just want to work in sports. I actually knew that I wanted to work in athletic communications. And the reason I was qualified for that was because I can write, I can talk to people, I can build relationships.
Yeah.
So I think all those things leading up to, and again, as you guys have hinted to, always being willing to help others when you get an opportunity to.
Tab, I know you agree with that, right? It's like an amen moment. That's
1,000%. Well, and something he said earlier too is being able to have conversations with anybody, being able to find common ground and to talk to anybody, no matter how smart they are, how, what their status is in this world, being able to just have a communication with people and just build those relationships. And it all starts with being able to communicate with just anybody.
Man, cool conversation. I love it. It's fun because when we've got friends along the way that we've been able to come in contact with that have achieved some amazing things, and it's because they've been prepared for big moments when they're ready for them, and that's what this whole conversation was about. And it's always so cool to be able to jam with friends and honestly like-minded people who are out there in the world, making their mark and who subscribe kind of to the same vibe that we do. Casey, everything that we do at Serial Progress Seeker is all about how do we build and build and build and build an army with us to go and take over the world. And that sounds like an aggressive statement, and it is. It's because we feel like we have slowly built up this knowledge base that we can help other people. We can help people change their business. We can help people change their personal lives, and we can help them, escape if they want to escape something, if they're trying to get out of a 9-to-5 lifestyle or a lifestyle that kind of keeps them confined, whether it's by money or by status or by being in an office, whatever it is. And that's everything that we want to do here at Serial Progress Seeker. So it's cool to be able to have, the same kind of conversation with folks who kind of subscribe to that same deal. So thanks so much for coming on today. And we're excited, man. We're excited to keep following your journey. And of course, always wish you the best. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you guys for having me. Always fun to take a walk down memory lane and share some of those memories, especially with somebody who was on the road for a lot of them.
That's right. All right, cool. Great stuff.